Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're setting the stage for a truly fascinating look into how we acquire language most efficiently. Think back to the last time you tried to learn a new language. Did you just stare at endless lists of vocabulary words? Did you try to memorize complex grammar rules in a total vacuum? Well, what if I told you there's a much more natural, effective way to master a language simply by focusing on something else entirely? Today, we're exploring the brilliant concept of content syllabuses, a method where you master language through subject matter. Okay, let's dive into this. We're going to quickly cover defining the content syllabus, the big advantages of subject-based learning, how to address learner confusion, Bernard Mohin's specific view on language, and finally, we'll wrap up with the knowledge framework. Section 1. Defining the content syllabus, learning English while learning academic subjects. So before we get to the strict technical definition, I want you to imagine a medical student. Instead of sitting in a generic English class learning, I don't know, how to order a coffee, they're learning English strictly through fascinating medical topics: anatomy, diagnostics, patient care. That is the essence of a content syllabus. It's a syllabus organized entirely around subject matter or content, instead of traditional grammar or language skills. In a content syllabus, the subject itself is literally the starting point. And this is such a powerful shift in perspective, right? You aren't just learning English, you're learning English while learning another academic subject, like science, history, computer science, or mechanical engineering. The magic here is that the language is learned completely naturally while the student is just deeply focused on studying that underlying subject. To ground this theory in real-world educational applications, you'll actually see this approach a lot in two major types of programs. The first is ESP, which stands for English for Specific Purposes. And the second is CLIL, Content and Language Integrated Learning. When engineering students learn English through engineering topics, they're usually sitting in one of these highly targeted, content-driven programs. And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of a content syllabus. You see, educational theorists usually divide syllabuses into two camps: product-oriented or process-oriented. A product syllabus focuses on exactly what students should learn, the end result. A process syllabus focuses entirely on how students learn, the activities and methods. But a content syllabus? It's not just one or the other, it's a dynamic combination of both. It includes learning important, specific subject knowledge, that's the product, while simultaneously learning through meaningful, engaging activities, the process. Section 2. Advantages of subject-based learning. Why this approach works. If you're going to change the way you learn a language, you really need to know the benefits. Think of these advantages as massive level-ups for the language learner. Using another subject as the basis for language gives the syllabus a crystal-clear, logical structure. Language and subject knowledge are learned side by side, which makes the learning deeply meaningful and practical. Because you're focused on real content, the English you learn is immediately ready for real-life and academic situations. It develops your language skills and your foundational knowledge simultaneously. What this brilliant structure does is completely avoid teaching random, disconnected language tasks in a vacuum. Everything has a purpose. Let's anchor this academic theory with a really relatable classroom example. When teachers organize lessons around a subject, the syllabus automatically becomes more organized. Imagine a science syllabus. It provides a completely natural, logical order. Students start by learning about living things in general. Then they progress to plants. Then they move on to animals, and finally, they zoom out to study the entire environment. Students are learning English every single step of the way, but the progression is driven by the logical flow of science, not by some textbook's arbitrary list of grammar rules. And hey, this isn't just for universities or high schools. It's incredibly powerful for adult learners too. Take Australia, for example. Many adult English as a second language, or ESL classes there, use content-based syllabuses. The lessons focus on topics that are immediately useful for new immigrants. We're talking about topics like health, education, social services, and community life. This really highlights the immediate, practical, everyday life benefits of this specific syllabus. It helps learners use English exactly where they need it most in their daily lives. Section 3. Addressing learner confusion. Is this health class or English class? Now, what's really interesting about this slide is that despite all the amazing benefits we just discussed, this method can actually cause a bit of an identity crisis. Some learners get confused because they feel like they're studying the subject instead of English. They might sit there and think, wait, am I studying health right now, or am I supposed to be learning English? Because of this, teachers have to explicitly clarify the distinction. Students need to understand they aren't just studying the subject as a final goal, they are learning English through the subject. The subject is simply a powerful, practical tool for unlocking the language. Once students grasp that, the confusion completely fades and the deep learning begins. Section 4. Mohan's View on Language, the 1986 Philosophy of Integrated Learning. This brings us to the exciting intellectual climax of today's explainer. If you want to understand the modern foundation of content-based learning, you absolutely have to look at the 1986 work of Bernard Moen. Moen is a massive supporter of this method. As he famously stated, students learn best with language, not just through language. Language and subject learning should happen together. Moen firmly believed that language should absolutely not be taught separately from subject knowledge. In his view, if you separate language from the subject you're trying to talk about, students simply cannot use English effectively in real-life situations. Learning both together, that is the secret sauce that makes English useful and meaningful. Section 5. The Knowledge Framework. Organizing Lessons the Mohan Way. So the theory is great, right? But how do teachers actually build these classes? Well, Mohan didn't just leave us with a philosophy. He created a brilliant, highly practical tool to help teachers organize these integrated lessons. He called it the Knowledge Framework. To build it, he divides all knowledge into two massive categories: practical or specific knowledge on one side, and theoretical or general knowledge on the other. By breaking knowledge down into these two buckets, Mohan believes you can teach literally any topic while seamlessly integrating language skills. Let's break down the specific tools within these two halves of the framework. So the crucial point is how we break down practical knowledge. This is divided into three areas: description, sequence, and choice. First up, description. This involves describing something by asking who, what, where, and what materials are involved. For example, a teacher might ask, describe a tiger. Second is sequence, which is all about explaining steps or order. The questions here are what happened, what happens next, or what's the process. An example would be asking a student to explain how to plant a tree. Finally, we have choice, which is all about making decisions. You ask, what choices are available? What are the alternatives? Or which decision is the best? For instance, which transport is best and why? By asking these specific questions, teachers are driving natural language use through very specific, practical subject matter. Let's move to the second half of Mohan's framework and see how this builds: theoretical knowledge. This is also divided into three areas: classification, principles, and evaluation. Classification is about grouping similar things. You ask what concepts are involved and how are they related. An example is classify animals into mammals, birds, and reptiles. Next is principles. This is about explaining rules or reasons. You ask what causes this or what rules apply. For example, exploring why do plants need sunlight. Lastly, we have evaluation, which involves giving opinions or judgments. The questions are what is good or bad, what is appropriate, or which option is better. For instance, which energy source is better? Explain your answer. Mohan's brilliant insight here is that every single topic can be taught using these 6 combined categories. By asking these different types of questions, teachers help students truly understand the subject, improve their critical thinking, and completely seamlessly develop their English language skills. I want you to think about that last evaluation question again. Which energy source is better? Explain your answer. Think about how much language you have to use to actually answer that. You have to use comparative adjectives, technical vocabulary, structural logic to build an argument, and cause and effect phrasing. You are using high-level English, but your brain is entirely focused on the science and the debate. That is the magic of the content syllabus in action. You learn the language because you desperately need the language to express your ideas about the subject. Which leaves us with one final, absolutely crucial thought for you today. Now that you understand the true power of content syllabuses, the advantages of integrated learning, and Mohan's brilliantly structured framework, ask yourself this: how will you integrate your own passions and subject interests as the ultimate tool for your language learning journey? Stop fighting the language in a vacuum. Find a subject you love, dive headfirst into the content, and just watch how naturally the language follows. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I really hope this transforms the way you learn.